Kanan is a beautiful and mischievous demon who hides as a perfect student, secretly viewing humans as food. But everything changes when she meets Yugji, a boy who doesn't fear her at all. Instead, he treats her with warmth and sincerity. The story starts at Tama Academy, where there is a strange rumor quietly circulating among the students, one that speaks about a breathtakingly beautiful girl who is often seen watching over the school from the disciplinary committee's window, carrying herself with such elegance and authority that no one would ever suspect that behind that flawless appearance, she is actually not human at all, but a demon named Kanan. Now, one day, something very unusual begins to unfold, as a boy named Yugji suddenly finds himself walking through the school in a strange, trance-like state, and despite not knowing where he is going, his body continues forward as though it is being guided by an invisible force that he cannot resist. Eventually, he reaches the disciplinary committee room, and the moment he crosses the threshold, something instantly changes, as if a switch has been flipped, causing his awareness to return all at once, making him blink in confusion while looking around the room, completely unsure of why he is there or what just happened to him. That is when he notices Kanan, who stands calmly before him as if she has been expecting his arrival all along, and without hesitation or any attempt to soften her words, she plainly informs him that she was the one who summoned his soul, and that her intention is to devour it. Now, under normal circumstances, anyone would react with fear, panic, or even try to escape upon hearing something like that, but Yugji, instead of showing any sign of terror, simply looks at her with confusion, as if he cannot fully grasp the seriousness of what she just said, which immediately disrupts Kanan's expectations. Seeing that her words alone are not enough to convey the situation, Kanan transforms into her demon form, revealing a more intimidating presence as she proudly introduces herself as a gourmet demon, and then proceeds to explain her background in a calm yet confident manner, as though she is describing something completely ordinary. She explains that in the demon realm, she lived a life surrounded by luxury, where extravagant meals were prepared for her every single day, each dish crafted with precision and presented beautifully. Yet despite the effort and perfection behind those meals, none of them ever brought her any satisfaction, leaving her feeling empty no matter how much she consumed. Because of that growing dissatisfaction, she eventually sought out her father, Beelzebub, and admitted to him that ordinary food no longer fulfilled her desires, expressing instead her curiosity about something far more unusual: human souls, particularly those of young humans, which she intended to carefully nurture before consuming at their peak. Rather than rejecting her idea, her father considered it seriously and ultimately decided that such an experience could contribute to her growth, although before allowing her to leave, he casually asked whether she had ever shared a meal with anyone before, a question that Kanan answered with confidence by saying no, which seemed to satisfy him enough to simply wish her luck before returning his attention to his meal. After that, Kanan entered the human world and took on the form of a beautiful high school girl, quickly adapting to her new environment with ease as she excelled academically, behaved perfectly, and maintained an elegant image, which allowed her to gain the trust and admiration of those around her, eventually earning a position on the disciplinary committee where she could observe students closely. From the rooftop, she would often look down at the students, and rather than seeing them as classmates or individuals, she viewed them as potential meals, treating the school itself as her personal pasture where she could carefully raise the food she intended to consume in the future. However, as time passed, her hunger gradually intensified until one morning it became impossible for her to ignore any longer, prompting her to finally decide that it was time to act and feast on at least one soul, leading her to scan the crowd of students below until she found one that stood out among the rest. That soul belonged to Yugji. Without hesitation, she placed him under a trance and summoned him to the disciplinary committee room, bringing the story back to the present moment where he now stands before her, confused and unaware of what is truly happening. As Kanan begins describing how she plans to prepare him before devouring his soul, Yugji completely misinterprets her words, assuming that she is speaking in a flirtatious manner rather than a literal one, and to her complete surprise, he suddenly kneels down and bows deeply, thanking her for paying attention to him. Kanan is left utterly confused as Yugji explains that it has always been his dream to be noticed by someone as beautiful as her, even going as far as to say that her demon-like appearance makes the situation even more appealing, which causes Kanan to realize that he has entirely misunderstood her intentions. As the situation grows more awkward, Kanan attempts to maintain control while internally panicking, especially when she begins to realize that she has no experience with human relationships or emotions, leading her to insist that people should only share intimacy with someone they truly love. However, Yugji immediately responds by saying that he already likes her, a statement that catches Kanan completely off guard and forces her to pause, as she begins to question what it truly means to like someone, something she has never considered before. While observing him more carefully, she suddenly notices that he is actually quite handsome, which only adds to her confusion as Yugji continues expressing his feelings openly, causing her to struggle even more to maintain her composure as she reminds herself that she is supposed to be a powerful demon in control of the situation. At some point, Yugji senses that he may have overwhelmed her, so he quietly backs off and adjusts himself properly, an action that Kanan notices and unexpectedly interprets as thoughtful, even though she cannot fully understand why. Then, in an attempt to ease the tension, Yugji suggests that they start by dating instead, a simple proposal that surprisingly calms Kanan down almost instantly, leading her to agree after a brief moment of hesitation. Yugji reacts with overwhelming excitement, quickly fixing his uniform before rushing out of the room, leaving Kanan alone as she begins to question whether she may have been tricked into something she does not fully understand. Later that day, Yugji casually tells his childhood friend that he now has a girlfriend, shocking her at first before she becomes happy for him and even suggests the idea of using nicknames, which plants a small idea in his mind. Meanwhile, Kanan continues observing the students as usual, but is suddenly startled when Yugji unexpectedly appears by jumping through the window, insisting that she call him by his first name now that they are dating. Although she initially feels nervous, she attempts to assert dominance by teasing him, only for his enthusiastic reaction to completely disarm her, making her realize that he is actually quite cute in his own way. When she tries to say his name, she struggles to even get the first syllable out, no matter how many times she repeats it in her head. And when Yugji points out her embarrassment, she quickly deflects by demanding that he say her name first. When he does so without hesitation, she experiences a strange and unfamiliar feeling, one that briefly excites her before she regains her composure, although Yugji continues to press her by leaning closer and encouraging her to say his name, which only makes her panic even more. In the end, she pushes him away and leaves, but not before finally managing to say his name, which fills Yugji with joy. As she walks away, her emotions feel mixed and confusing, and although she tries to reaffirm her goal of devouring human souls, Yuji's presence continues to disrupt her thoughts. Later on, as Kanan continues observing the school like usual, she suddenly notices two students openly flirting with each other, and without hesitation, she steps in to scold them, her strict tone immediately breaking the mood and causing the two students to panic the moment they recognize her, quickly running off in opposite directions. As the hallway returns to normal, Kanan reflects on what she just saw, thinking that humans are far too easily controlled by their desires, and as she watches the other students pass by, she quietly vows to keep their souls pure and untainted, so that she can devour them at their best someday. But just as she is lost in those thoughts, Yugji suddenly appears right behind her and casually mentions that he hopes they can be like those couples one day, which instantly sends Kanan into a panic. Trying to regain control, she quickly steps away and asks him seriously what he actually wants from her. But Yugji only looks confused, since to him, it is completely normal for couples to want to spend time together, and without overthinking it, he casually asks where she would like their first time to be. The moment he says that, Kanan stiffens as her mind begins racing, panicking at the fact that he is already thinking about locations, which frustrates her because she believes such things should only happen much later, after something as serious as marriage. Even so, she forces herself to stay calm and ask which location he has in mind. Yugji honestly says the park, but that only makes Kanan more nervous, as she can't imagine doing something inappropriate in a public place, and even when he explains that he simply wants it to be memorable, she becomes overwhelmed and asks for another option. Then he suggests the movies, which only makes things worse, so he changes his approach and proposes going on a trip together, briefly exciting Kanan until he casually mentions hot springs, immediately making her think he is shameless. Flustered, she insists that something meaningful should happen in the privacy of a room, still misunderstanding everything, while Yugji calmly writes down her preference in his notes. As he expresses how touched he is that they are planning something meaningful together, Kanan becomes even more embarrassed, until suddenly, everything clicks. She realizes she completely misunderstood what he meant by first time, and the moment that realization hits her, she lets out a shocked scream. Desperate to recover, she quickly acts confident before immediately running away in embarrassment. Later, as school ends and students begin heading home, Kanan stands quietly trying to calm herself, but Yugji appears again and casually invites her to walk home together. Surprised, she questions it, but when he simply says he is her boyfriend, her heart unexpectedly flutters, and although she tries to stay composed, she ends up agreeing. However, as they walk, Kanan begins falling behind because her heart is racing so fast that she feels exhausted, and when Yugji notices, she makes an excuse that he should walk ahead and protect her. Instead, he pulls her closer and reassures her, which only makes her more flustered, and when he offers his hand, she freezes, overthinking the meaning of such a simple action. After panicking, she comes up with her own solution. Soon, people begin staring because Kanan has tied Yuji's hands with a rope and is holding the other end, confidently claiming that this is what holding hands means, before asking what he thinks. To her surprise, Yuji actually enjoys it, interpreting her actions as a sign that she does not want to let him go, which embarrasses her so much that she suddenly runs away. But as she heads toward the park to calm down, she hears his voice behind her, only to realize that she has been dragging him along the ground because she forgot she was still holding the rope. Even then, Yuji simply laughs it off and says it was exciting, even joking that being treated like a pet might be fun. Frustrated, Kanan turns away, but Yuji quickly suggests they do something simple together. At first, she misunderstands again, but instead, they end up sitting on a bench with croquettes. Yuji shares that he has always wanted to eat together with his girlfriend, and hearing that unexpectedly relaxes Kanan. As she reaches for sauce, Yuji stops her, insisting it is already perfect, and although she questions him, his passionate explanation makes her giggle, so she decides to humor him and eats it plain. The moment she takes a bite, she freezes, because for the first time in her life, something actually tastes good. As she processes that unfamiliar feeling, Yuji happily says it tastes better today, believing it is because they are eating together, and although Kanan does not fully understand, she continues eating quietly while he watches her with a smile and calls her cute, making her blush. And in that quiet moment, as the sun slowly sets, Kanan begins drifting away from her original purpose, because instead of seeing humans as prey, she is slowly starting to understand them. That marks the end of today's anime recap. If you enjoyed the video and want more of it, please support the channel by leaving a like and subscribe. Let's help us reach a current goal of 10K subscribers.